Dr. Henry, thanks for joining our shows. And I share with you, this show is all about you. And there's a lot of things about your works, your life that our audience will be learning from you. Can I start by asking you to introduce a little bit about who you are for our audience,
Sure,
please?
sure. And thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here and talk to your listeners. My name is Hank, I go by, and I am a psychologist by trade. I have been one for about 40 years. I'm 74. I know I don't look it, but I am. Um, and I live in Connecticut now, have two kids, both doing very well. We can talk about that later,
Mm.
because that's one of my favorite roles is being a father. And speaking of fathers, I grew up in an area in New York on Long Island.
Mm.
Have you ever heard of Long Island?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Long Island, New York, in a town called Great Neck. And my father had a very interesting job. He was the story editor of Superman comics in the TV show for 30 years. So ever since I was 7 years old, he would come in my bedroom and wake me up in the morning. And the first thing he would say is, "How's this for a Superman story? How's this for a cover?" He would test everything out on me.
Ah.
And then when he would drive me to school, we had a carpool. There were five other kids on the same street, and he would test out his ideas on, his readers. Basically, he used to say that his boss was 60 million 10-year-olds. Uh, so I grew up in a very creative type of environment.
Mm.
I was not a good student in high school. I was not really interested in studying. How could I? I was reading Superman comics all the time. So that was a lot better. And I was watching movies with my father, TV shows. Every time we'd watch a TV show, he would say to me, "Can you guess the ending?" This would be like after 3 minutes. And then he would say to me, "How would you make it better?"
Mm.
And this was really my education.
Mm.
And what is interesting is many years later, I had written a book on the subject of emotional intelligence,
Mm.
and I wrote an article for TV Guide
Mm.
on how to use TV to increase the emotional intelligence of your kids. I did the same thing my father did. I'd be watching a TV show with my daughter, and I would say, "How would you deal with that situation? How do you think they're feeling?" And so on. So I wasn't a good student. In the first college that I went to, this was in 1966, when my parents took me was to a school in New Hampshire. And when my mother saw the school, she started to cry because it was so bad. One of the classrooms was a barn. Now you have to remember, this was 1966.
Mm.
So a lot of kids in America, this was during the Vietnam War, were being drafted. So one of the ways that you could avoid the draft is to go to college, and that would be called the college deferment. So at this school, there were a lot of kids who went to really good schools, but they got kicked out. So rather than go into the army, they came to this school. There were like three types of students. The ones who got kicked out of good schools, really dumb kids, would be the second category. And then I would be in the third category, underachiever. So then one semester I took a psychology class, and the teacher inspired me, and I studied, and I got the highest mark on the test. And this was the first time that I ever got academic reinforcement. Good. So I became a psychology major. And my parents got excited. They started seeing, grades go up. And then I transferred to another school. Now, my friends who were all in schools like Harvard and Yale, they would make fun of the school I went to. But for me, it was an upgrade. So I spent 2 years there at a school in Vermont. which is called Wyndham College, which now is called Landmark College, and it's a school for dyslexic kids who have trouble reading. When I told my mother that, she said, "What was the difference?" So I became a student there. And then I went and I got a master's in school psychology. And this was all in the Northeast. And then I went to the Midwest for my PhD at the University of Kansas, where The Wizard of Oz took place. And that changed my life for the better, because I was now out of a East Coast culture. I grew up in a affluent community, and so going to the Midwest, it really changed my values. By the time I left there, I did not care how much money a person made. I did not care how big their house was, what kind of car they drove. All I cared about is, what does the person bring to the table? What are their own, attributes? Like, are they creative? So then I went to California for my internship in psychology. Before you can practice and get your degree, you have to do an internship. So I did that at a hospital in Brentwood, California, at the VA hospital, Veterans Administration Hospital. And here's the interesting thing. It was the first psychiatry ward in the United States that was exclusively designed for Vietnam veterans.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was real. So this is now 1978. And that was a very interesting experience. They actually had 6 suicides in a year and a half. The odds of that happening are over 1,000,000 to 1, much higher on a ward. They had a national investigation from Washington come down to see what was going on. It was a very interesting experience. I learned a lot. And then when I finished, my father, being a writer, had always encouraged me to write a book as a way of separating myself from the pack. So now we're like in 1978. So I sold a book, and it was called Nobody's Perfect, and it was on the subject of giving and taking criticism. Now, at that time, nobody was using the word criticism. Everybody was using the word at work, feedback. Like, come into my office, I have some feedback for you. So I had this book, and one of the chapters in it, there was a chapter on criticizing your children for parents. There was a chapter on self-criticism. And there was a chapter on criticism at work. And I took that chapter and I parlayed it into the working world. And and the subject caught on, and I started speaking and teaching at business schools. And then from there, I got into the subject of anger. And then I wrote another book on, anger. So now I had anger and criticism. And then I wrote another book on emotional intelligence. And then another book. I've written 3 books on criticism. To give you an idea, I'd call up my mother when I was traveling. Maybe I'd be in Chicago. And she would be in an assisted living home now, where they help for elderly people. And they get extra help. And I'd call her up. And, "Hey, Mom." And she said, "Who's that?" As if it could only be me or my sister. There was nobody else calling her. So I said, "It's Hank." And she said, "Well, where are you?" I said, "Chicago." So, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm giving a talk." And she'd say, "On what?" I'd say, "Criticism." And she'd say, "Again? My God, you really milked that subject." So I was talking all over the world on the subject of criticism and managing anger and emotional intelligence. And for me, versus, seeing clinical patients, this was much better. I was having a great time, because you have to remember, like when I would go to London or Paris, it was like a vacation, because all my expenses were being paid for. It was great. So that, and then I really built a career. around that, specializing in those subjects, and I got to work with the most elite companies, and that sort of brings us up to now. My last book. How old are your kids?
My kids are 17, 12, and 10.
Okay. So you would like my last book, which is called The Unlikely Art of Parental Pressure. And I will tell you that unhealthy parental pressure is a global pandemic. In fact, it's worse. Kids are under more pressure to succeed in Asia, Vietnam, Korea than the United States. And as a result, it's causing eating disorders, depression, low self-esteem. And the funny thing is these are well-intentioned parents. You know, parents aren't waking up in the morning saying, how can I drive my kid nuts today? You know, what can I do to ruin their mental health? No. The parents think, study more, get better grades. They think they're helping their kid. But in reality, it makes it worse. So that's what I've been doing for the last year, is speaking on the subject of parental pressure. And it's sort of speaking to parents is very different than speaking to the corporate world. In a way, I like it better because I have two kids, and I think of all the things that I have done, or maybe what I would have done differently. So on. Wow. So that is what I do. In terms of my likes, I watch a lot of movies. In fact, this is an interruption of my movies that I'm watching.
I'm sorry.
I get a lot of pleasure out of buying films and collecting, and I'm very interested. Sometimes I think I should have been in the movie business, you know, as a director, as a writer. I don't know if I'd have the talent to be a director, but certainly as coming up with stories.
Absolutely.
I could.
And you see, you wrote the book about anger management. Then the movie from Adam Sandler came after that. You know,
my daughter's in it. My daughter is in it.
Oh, your daughter was in it. Oh.
Yeah, she is in. I'm going to tell you exactly the next time you watch it where you see her. Because you saw the movie, right?
Yes, I saw the movie.
Okay. So remember the scene where at Yankee Stadium, where Adam Sandler runs out onto the field, and Woody Harrelson is like talking to him. He's like the usher. Well, if you look at that scene, you will see a very pretty young blonde girl right behind Adam Sandler. That's my daughter.
I will watch it again tonight, and I'll show my children, because my daughter, she's in America now for high school, and my other two kids, we're gonna watch that movie again tonight. It's Friday here, right? So it's the best time for the whole family to watch a movie together, and I will show them your daughter on that scene.
But where is she? Where is she in school in America?
She's in Seattle, so she's. We been living in Seattle for 10 years, and then we decided to bring the whole family back to Vietnam. So because we want to grow them up in a culture that closer to where we rooted.
Okay.
Yeah.
When are you going back to Seattle?
Next year. I will go to Seattle in March of next year.
Okay. When you go, I have a very good friend in Seattle, and his wife is from. He's been married for about 30 years. Is from Thailand. And actually, he would be a good person to have also. He talks about project management, teaches at UCLA, got his MBA from Harvard. And I want to hook you up with him because when you go out to Seattle to visit your daughter, he can really show you around.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
And host you.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
It'll be nice. It'll be nice. It's a nice city.
Yep. It is very beautiful city, and I would love to connect it to your friend also.
Does she like it out there?
She loves to go to the States, even the moment that we brought her back here, because like the book that you said, parental pressure, right? There's also societal pressure in here, like the system, the school, the
Of
teachers, the way
course.
of teaching everything, and we took into consideration about that a lot, Dr. Hendrie, because whether or not we knew that. It's a choice that we make. We wanted her to study in that kind of environment so that she can learn and be more flexible in life. So 2 years ago we sent her to 2.5 years ago we sent her to the state right by the middle of the pandemic, so we couldn't see her for two and a half
So
years
she's basically in a private school,
Now she's into the public school.
into a public school.
Yes,
And who is she living with?
she's living with like host family.
Oh, that's great. What a great experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was among a very few Vietnamese international student came to the state in 2001, and back then it was a whole new world to me. So I was lonely back then. And
Were you educated in Vietnam or the U.S.?
the U.S.
Where?
I also get education from Seattle. So I got my university there, and then my master degree there also.
At University of Washington?
No, I got
Seattle
it.
University?
Yeah, yes.
Very nice. I hope I trust you got a raincoat.
Yes, we have the rainbow every day. I really love your sense of humor, Han, because I think the humor is the great weapons for these days, and I think a lot of that comes from the environment that you grow up and allow us to bring you all the way back then, because I think the your father play a very big role in your life, and your mother also play a big role in your life,
Here,
right?
what I learned from my father was creativity. Be
Uh-huh.
creative and take risks. And what I learned, but he was very tough, at least
Mm.
with the people that he worked with.
Mm.
And what I learned from my mother was compassion
Mm.
and being empathic and so
Mm.
on. So in my relationship with my kids, I've taken the best qualities of my father and my mother and got rid of all the bad qualities, the yelling and so on. Like if I would show my father my homework, if
Mm.
I had a spelling mistake, he'd say, "Don't show it to me with any mistakes," and so on, because he was
Oh.
too busy doing his own work when I
Mm.
really think about it.
Mm.
So he was. My mother was much kinder, I
Mm.
will say, than my father. But he was my best friend, and my mother was my best friend. So what was nice is when they passed away, I had no unfinished business
Mm.
with them. I really had very loving relationships with my parents.
Wow.
It
Wonderful.
makes me happy just to think about it.
Wonderful. And thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that. One of the
Now here's my question:
I'm sorry.
How's the economy in Vietnam?
The economy in Vietnam is getting back, so it's starting the recovery is getting faster than people thought. Okay,
So do they have like seminars and speakers?
they do have seminars
See,
and speakers.
well, that's your job, is to get me a speaking gig in Vietnam, like a couple. I'm
Uh-huh.
not really interested in the money, but I'm interested in the transportation
Mm,
and having it like a vacation.
absolutely, absolutely.
I think some of my books have been translated in Vietnamese also.
Mm,
So
absolutely.
I would like that.
And I would love that too. And I I I want to go back to your story a little bit. Okay. So you say that you were able to learn and get what good from your father and what good from your mother and get rid of what you don't think is work. How did you do that? It's not easy to.
Well, I became more aware. For example,
Mm,
I have an older sister,
mm,
and growing up, I was clearly the favorite. Now, part of that was because I idolized my father. My sister did not like reading Superman comics, but I did, and play cards with him. So I got better treatment from my parents than my sister. I have no memory. This is actually sad. I have no memory of my sister ever sitting on my father's lap watching TV. I used to do that all the time. I have no memory of him ever really being affectionate to her. So, and he would make a lot of jokes because she was heavy. So he would make like a lot of jokes about her weight, which were cruel. The funny thing, I would laugh at them because they were funny, but I can only imagine how hurtful it was to her. So when I think of my daughter, I'm affectionate to my daughter and always supportive. I don't say cruel things to her. That was something that my father did. He would yell a lot. And, he would yell at me, whether it was doing your homework or whatever. And I rarely would yell at my kids. So I became more aware of those toxic type of, behaviors. And my reward is that my daughter is 40, just turned 40. We're going out for dinner Sunday to celebrate. My son is 33. So my reward is that they call me almost every other day. That's my reward.
Wow.
So that is really, really good. And also where I am in my life, my next book is called The Dating Matrix.
The Dating Matrix.
And the subtitle is An Unvarnished Look at Dating After 60. And it's really about online dating. I mean, it's going to read like a horror book and science fiction. You cannot believe some of the experiences that I have had. So this is the book that I'm writing now, and for me it's a lot more interesting than the silly management books and business books that I am basically sick of, because every book that you see on LinkedIn, have you ever noticed on LinkedIn, every day there's a new book, and they're all the same. And what for me is amusing is you'll see these young people, young meaning in my mind, 40, and they're coming out with a book, and they think it's new. They don't realize that there hasn't been a new concept in psychology in 50 years. So for me, I've heard it before, and and so on. So I don't want to write that stuff anymore. It's like grunt work. I want to write this book about my dating experiences because I think it could be a great Netflix series. I'm serious.
All of that creativity within you, and that allows you to make sense of everything, right? I want to ask about your daughter. What is her birthday date?
Her birthday was September 30th.
September 30th.
So my son got COVID when we were supposed to go out for dinner on the 29th. So we had to postpone her dinner till October 9th, which is Sunday. And what I got for her 40th birthday was a Chanel purse.
Wow, so she would be very happy.
You know what? When I bought it, as I was, paying for it, I was sweating.
No, she deserves this. She's your present.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it would be something that she would never get for herself, and it will go up in value. And I wanted to give it to her. It gave me a lot of joy to give it to her. Wow. It was really good. Yeah. And cheaper than a car.
She's in my same age. I was born in 1982, so I reckon she's the same age.
Yes, she was born in 1982. When is your birthday?
October 13th, so next week on Thursday.
Next week, happy birthday.
Thanks a lot. Happy belated birthday to your daughter also. And I look forward to a very wonderful Sunday.
You're going to be 40. Wait, so what are you going to do for your 40th birthday?
I don't know. I think that I'll let it go, and I let my wife and my children and my mom. My mom. The good thing is my mom is gonna come here to celebrate my birthday, so she never missed a single birthday in my life. Even when I was in the States for school, so she flew over and attended birthday party. I'm sure that we do something. Uh, yeah.
So let me ask you, because I'm interested, what does your daughter find to be the biggest difference between the U.S. and Vietnam?
I think the space for personal space very different from the US and Vietnam, and she's like me want to have that space, between the enough space for us to have it, like not too close to another new person, but not too far away for us to observe and get too close. In here, everybody, to her it was like, it's like very very get too close to
On
you.
top of each other. It's very crowded.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons, because when I was studying anger, I saw that there were cultural differences. And anger in Asia is considered a very negative emotion. And one of the reasons is because people live together in families, generations, and it becomes very crowded. So you have to be more on guard of managing negative, types of emotions.
Yep. And since you asked that one, I also want to share another one. Another big thing for her, that is respecting. From the people in the older position, like teacher, higher position teacher, or something like that. Your opinions are not welcome. So a lot of times in America, we teach kids to be more creative, more innovative, let them be free of thinking, right? In here is a top-down decision. Like if you be out of line for creativity, then they're gonna ask you, why is that? Why don't you follow the directions and stuff? So I knew that she had some years of frustrations from school in here, and to me it's just a learning experience. You don't have everything you want in life, so sometimes you have to live with that and then learn how to be feel comfortable under uncomfortabilities.
So it's like the conformity is higher in Vietnam.
It is, yes, it
right?
is.
On that, go along with the group more than be individual. That's why in China, the most unpopular rich people are the real estate agents, the entrepreneurs, because they're like very independent.
Yep.
Rather than building relationships and dealing with other people.
Speaking of speaking engagement, Han, what topic you like to me to promote, so that we potentially can bring you here to Vietnam?
It's up to them. A combination of performing under pressure. One of my books, emotional intelligence, giving and taking criticism, managing anger. If we call it emotional intelligence, then I can work all those subjects in. Because what I find is, what I ask myself is, what will be most useful to the people that I'm speaking to, based on my experiences. And what I found, like I'm giving a presentation in 2 weeks, and it's only an hour. So I'm focusing on 3 things, and it's all to entrepreneurs, startup companies, high tech. And I told her, I said, the 3 things that I think they will find most useful are: 1, emotional regulation, being able to manage your emotions, whether it's anxiety, anger. Also, how to create emotions, like how do you make yourself enthusiastic? Like let's say you're getting ready to do a podcast, and you've had a hard day and whatever, and you're not really energized, and it's going to start in 30 seconds. What can you do to make yourself enthusiastic and pump yourself up? So that would be one subject, emotional regulation. Then I think giving and taking criticism, and then performing under pressure.
Yep.
And I think those 3 things, those 3 subjects, are all very valuable skills that really allow a person to be more successful than if they were not practicing those. To say nothing of how it impacts in your personal life. I mean, forget about criticizing your subordinate or your coworker. What about criticism in your marriage? What about criticizing your kids? And I would always like to mix all those experiences. Not everybody I found, I work in the working world, really cares about getting a promotion and developing something. But what I found, so they don't really care about how to criticize your boss because they're just what I call 9-to-5ers. They show up at 9, they leave at 5, and they want to do as little as possible, and that's it. But what I do find is they all care about their kids. So that became like a common denominator. So that's why I like to use a lot of family examples in my presentation, because it allows the subjects to resonate more effectively with the people. They might not think about that criticism is important at work, but when they think about it in their family, their kids, yeah, that's really important. Tell me more.
Wow. I think, yep. With the global pandemic like this, right? There's a lot of pressure everywhere, and corporations also face pressure for performing. So I think the area of regulating your emotions and put it performing under pressure is very important.
And let me give you one, and your listeners one tip. So they're getting more than just listening about Hank.
Yes.
For pressure. The most important point in performing under pressure, first of all, nobody rises to the occasion. That's a myth. But people will do worse. In other words, you can't do better than your best. So if you're an athlete and the fastest you can run a 100-yard dash, like at the Olympics, is 9:05, the day of the Olympics, you're not going to run faster. You can't jump higher than you can jump. So you don't rise to the occasion. But what is true is that many times in that pressure moment, people do below their capabilities. That's choking. They blow. You see that in the Olympics all the time. And the most important thing for people to remember is, how do you perceive? Like, for a lot of people, giving a presentation is a pressure moment, especially if their boss is going to be in the room, or it could be a sales call. That becomes a pressure moment. Now, the most important thing to be able to do your best is how you perceive the moment. If you perceive it as an opportunity, you're going to do fine, because then you can start to be more confident and enthusiastic. If you perceive it as threatening, like you're saying things to yourself, oh, if I don't do well, I'm going to, lose my job and so on, then you will do worse, because it sabotages your confidence. When I first started teaching at UCLA, I would get very nervous. Why? Because I was saying things like, if I don't do well, they're never going to call me again, and my career will be over. Once I started to tell myself, this is a great opportunity to promote myself and to sell books, and I'm going to get a lot of business out of this, I couldn't wait to start talking, because then it was fun. So when I first started with my first book, Nobody's Perfect, doing, instead of podcasts, you'd have like radio interviews and so on. At the beginning, I'd get nervous. Once I started to realize, this is a great opportunity. My friends are going to see me. I'll sell books. Then my only problem was, how do I get the interviewer to be quiet so I can do all the talking? That's how quickly it changed. It'd be like if your daughter is taking a test and she says, oh, everything's riding on this, and if I don't get an A, it's going to be terrible and so on. That will make her anxious, and she'll do below her ability. If she can think, this is an opportunity for me to show the teacher how much I know, and I can't wait, then she's going to do her best.
So everything is our thinking.
Your perception of the situation.
And Han, you do a lot of thinking, deep thinking throughout your life, right? I want to bring you to the moment that you went to the school and studied psychology. Your mom was crying back then, right? And
One of the
yeah.
yeah, because all my friends were. She was like embarrassed. This is where her son has to go to school. I had the greatest 2 years of my life
My question was, why psychology stick with you? Because you was and
because I got the highest mark.
huh?
Because I got the highest mark. It was the first. It was that feeling of success.
Oh, so
That hey, this is good, and then it just became easier because I was also interested. When I was in graduate school, I was very happy because all I had to do is study and read, and it was pressure, no pressure. I was getting I mean, the pressure for me was to do well because I didn't want to have to get a job in the real world. I liked staying in school. I had a great apartment. My social life was good. And every once in a while, I'd have to take a test. No problem.
And then you see, your father was the one that always encouraged you to do more because he asked you to write a book so that you can impact and have more impact, and now your works have impact almost everybody in all aspect of life, like working and living, right? And so how did you, I want to ask this question because your work will involve a lot of thinking, so how have you helped yourself to expand your ability to think?
Well, one of the things for me is unlike some people in my profession or you see on LinkedIn, they talk about the same subject for 40 years. They give the same presentation. And they turn it into a business. See, one of the things I never did is I never turned it into a business in the sense of I didn't want to have to be responsible for other people. I didn't want to have to hire people and so on. I just like being a free agent. So my thing was instead of talking about the same subject, which would be boring, I would go to different topics. And that would be my creativity. I'd look around. Like before I wrote the anger book, I remember being in the library at the hospital and I was reading some journals and I read an article on anger management that the psychologist did at the University of California at Irvine. And I said to myself, oh, anger, that would be a good topic to do after criticism. And that's what happened. And then when I did my first anger book, Jane Fonda, she had written a book called Jane Fonda's Workout Book. And it started the exercise trend in America. She was a very famous actress, and she did a movie that was called On Golden Pond with her father. And there's a scene where she's in a bathing suit. And when all these women in America saw what Jane Fonda, who was like at the time maybe 40, what she looked like in a bathing suit, her book became an immediate bestseller. She turned it into an industry. So in the back of my mind, Jane Fonda's workout book. So one night, a friend of mine came over. I said, I need a title for the anger book. And the way that I structured it were the 22 chapters in it all dealt with a separate topic of anger, different dimension. So you could read it in any order that you didn't have to read it in order. So what are therapists always saying to their patients? Well, you got to work out your anger. So all of a sudden it dawned on me, wait, work out your anger? Jane Fonda has her workout book. I'm going to call this Dr. Weisinger's Anger Workout Book. And that's exactly how it did. And then the creative part, we had these like 22 chapters, is we came up with catchy titles for each one. For example, one was building a support system, because when you're angry, it's very important to have a support system where you can talk to people. They can give you a different perspective on things. Now, there was a very popular TV show at the time called The A-Team. So we called that Building Your A-Team. When we were talking about anger in the family, there was a popular TV show called Family Feud. So we called it, Family Feud, working out the anger that's all in the family, which was another TV show. For anger and sex, we called it the X-rated workout. So that was a lot of fun. So for me, every book had to be different, had to be a different topic. Even the books on criticism, they all had different formats, on it. So I wasn't writing the same thing. So for me, a book has to be is a creative project. And then once it's finished and after I promote it, I don't want to spend 10 years keep on promoting the same thing. I want to go on to something else. My father taught me something, which was pick a topic and then be able to write it 50 different ways.
Wow.
So I would take the topic of criticism. Oh, okay. Sexual criticism, criticizing your kids, self-criticism, how to criticize your boss, how to criticize your customer, and so on. So I take the same subject and I would just broaden the application. So that's how I would think about projects. And I love giving people ideas and so on. I'm good at that, and like now, whenever I watch a movie, I'm always thinking 20 minutes ahead, where's this going? What's going to happen? Can I guess the ending? What's the twist? My father would teach me that the ending cannot come out of left field. You have to have a chance to guess it. There has to be like clues in the film. So he taught me a lot about structuring ideas and story development. And that's why I say many times my regret is not being in the entertainment industry. You have to understand, if you go back to 1966, and I said to my parents, I want to be in the movie business, they would send me to a psychiatrist. At that time, from the area that I grew up in, you either have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or at the very worst, an accountant.
Well, if you're not in the entertainment industry, but you've been interviewed around the world, right?
Oh no! One lady that was a friend of mine said to me, she said, Hank, you're not really a psychologist. You're really an entertainer.
Yep.
And I started thinking about it. I say, you're right. I come out on the stage and I have different monologues. I got different material. I can do a monologue about emotional intelligence. I can do a monologue on criticism. I can do a monologue on anger. I said, did you ever see Johnny Carson? Do you know who Johnny Carson is?
No, I have.
Johnny Carson, for 30 years, was the king of late night TV. Everybody in my generation grew up with him, and our parents watched him. And his show would be like an hour and a half. Every major star in Hollywood would want to be on his show. And he was the best, compared to all the people now, not even close. So I would say to this lady, I say, you're right. I'm like Johnny. It's like I come into your living room and I'm giving a talk about criticism and everybody feels comfortable with me. Now, do you ever know who Larry David is?
Yes.
Okay. I said, so I'm a combination of Johnny. You'll feel very comfortable with me. But I got a little Larry David, so I might offend you. You might want to kick me out of your living room before the night is over. They go together. And that's how I think of myself now. And I like it. I don't want to think of myself as a great psychiatrist. I like thinking of myself as an entertainer, making people feel good, and making information funny and accessible so it resonates with the people that I'm trying to help.
Wow. So we need the past, we need the present. That what you're doing. You're gonna be writing a book about like online dating also, right? And then sharing the new looks.
So you saw the movie The Matrix?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. In my mind, the way the TV show opens on Netflix, the series, is it always opens the same. I'm at the computer and I'm going into the dating matrix.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the show, I'm saying, "Let me out of here." You know why? Because everybody lies. I don't. You know, I put my age as 74. That's how old I am. I went out with a lady recently. She told me she was 69. So I said, "Oh, okay, that's good, because that's like 5 years younger than me." So that's like a senior in college going out with a freshman. I said, "Yeah, that's good." As soon as I saw her, I knew she lied about her age. It turned out that she was 79. I got sick. It was. I felt. Did you ever see the movie Psycho?
I heard about that.
Yeah. Well, I felt I was out with a corpse. You know, and it's terrible. So there's no authenticity. That's why nothing ever works out, because everybody's always lying. I'd say I'm not going to tell people Leonardo DiCaprio and then have them get depressed when Harrison Ford shows up. Be ridiculous. Can you imagine if I put my age as like 55? How crazy would that be? But that's what people do. So I think, and what's funny is, why do people go on? Because of hope. It's like me. You go in with hope and romance, and you think that's what's happening. And what it turns out to be is getting a punch in the face in a horror show.
Just because.
So I think this book has something. The rules change once you're over 60.
I'm curious.
And what I realized is the women that I would find attractive, they want no part of me. I don't blame them. Why would a 55-year-old want to go out with somebody who's 74? She'd have to be nuts. Now, if I lived in LA, and I was the movie director, then I'd be going out with 30-year-olds.
Curiously, I would like to ask. It's not just like over 60s doing that. I think it's almost even young people also doing that. They hide their identity on.
Yeah, but that's different. Somebody who's 25, a lady who's 25, girl doesn't have to lie about her age unless she wants to make believe she's older. You know, and a guy who's 35. So it's different for younger people. I mean, there was a dating site, Dating Over 70, and when I see that you've been noticed by, and then I look at the picture, I get sick.
And I want to ask you the last question so that you can continue with your movie, all right? And so I know that the books about the dating metrics is gonna come in soon. I know that this Sunday you're gonna have a beautiful, like a late birthday party with your son and your daughter. And please tell her that we say happy birthday, belated happy birthday to her, all right? And is there any exciting things that Anne is working on and you want to share with us now so we can celebrate with you together now?
Big thing that I am working on. I would have to say, no, I try to make each day exciting. And I'm pretty happy, pretty content. I worked very hard to put myself in the position where I can now just sit around and do what I like, because I don't have really a lot of financial anxiety. Just want to, how much more money can I leave to my kids, really, my age. I mean, I went to my doctor the other day. I told my friends, they said, "What did he say?" I said, "He gave me bad news. He told me I should live at least till 84. I said, "What? I got to make it another 10 years?" I am one of those people. I say that in jest. And of course, everybody wants to. And see, this is another thing in dating. When I was growing up, you never saw people in their 60s getting divorced because the life expectancy was much shorter. Now the life expectancy is good. So when somebody is 60, if they're in a bad marriage for 20, 30 years, they say, "You know what? I want out because I can be in another relationship for 20 years. Now, that's delusional. It doesn't happen. When I see a 65-year-old lady saying she's looking for a long-term relationship, what are you talking about, a long-term relationship? What does that even mean? That until you have to help the man to go to the bathroom? That's a long-term relationship. So that to me is comical. So my advice to people, and I think everybody, I think you have to remember, guilt is something that exists in the past and regret. Anxiety is about the future. I like to live in the present. And the more I can live in the present, the happier I am.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
you are the lucky person that have your daughter and your son call you every other day, right? And
Yeah.
and I like your present to have somebody there with you. So continue looking for dating, all right? And then one day you're gonna look for somebody
Oh,
that can
hey,
be
the
there.
good thing about writing a book on dating is every time I go out now, I can write it off my taxes. I'm doing research. I'm doing field research.
So all of the psychology works that gonna continue carrying
That's
with
right.
that, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
Now I have two rules that I won't go out with anybody unless I have FaceTime so I can see what they look like. And I tell them if we're going to go out for dinner on the first date, make sure you bring your credit card. Because I'm not going to, I have no problem, as I said, taking a lady out, but not if she misrepresents herself. Why should I'm not the bad guy because I don't want to pay for somebody. I'm the one driving from Connecticut to New York City. So at least if the person's not going to be honest, why should I take them out? They should be taking me out.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's a lovely chance for me to meet you and to talk to you. Thank you for your generosity.
You ever come to New York?
I will definitely come to New York in summer of next year, not March. So in summertime, yes.
So I will come into the city, and you'll be with your family, and I will show you, give you the New York tour.
Thank you very much. And also,
which means going to good restaurants.
Yeah. Also, have to connect me with your friend in Seattle. So I will connect with your friend now.
Yeah,
and,
I'll do that this week. I won't do it tonight, but like tomorrow, the next day.
Yes.
Anytime. I'll send you his thing, and you can do a podcast with him.
Absolutely.
And yeah, he's on LinkedIn a lot, as you know, on that. Okay. But this has been very enjoyable.
It is to me. Thanks a lot. And I'll connect with you if we have any speaking engagement opportunities for Vietnam.
Okay. Will you send me a link to the podcast so I can put it on my social media?
Yes, absolutely. I will.
This is what I like. Yeah.
Thanks, Han. Continue your movie and enjoy it. Sorry to disturb you when you watching the movie.
No problem. It wasn't a disturbance. It was a pleasure.
You have a wonderful evening. All right.
Okay, and happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Make it a great one.
Thank you.
Make it a great one. All right.
Bye bye.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.